was sitting in front of the judge, and the judge said to me, Al, I said, what? He said, Al, do you know what? He said, I think you're a real ladies' man. And I was very proud of that. Well, he didn't actually say ladies' man, he said pimp, but, you know, I knew what he meant. Someone said to me, go play. And that's exactly what I did. I got out my Harman Kardon Go Plus Play 2 Mini, although it doesn't look very mini, and my Tribit Stormbox Blast. Is it the pound for pound world champion? That's a good question, and I'm glad you asked me that. Well, I'm sitting right on the fence. It could be a draw. It could be a majority decision.
Heavyweight champion of the world!
It's between the Soundcore Motion Boom and the Tribit Stormbox Blast. I've got to take into account you need a mains lead to charge this. It's 5.5 kilos. And the price is, it's up and down a little bit at the moment. I still think today I could get this for 195 quid. It seems to be hovering 180-ish, 230 at the moment in dollars, about $200 if indeed you can get it. There's a big run on them and most of them are out of stock, but you can get hold of some. 200 quid. What else could I do for 200 quid? I could get a Harman Kardon Go Plus Play. Oh, no, I can't. I used to be able to. Do you know what? I was shocked. I was already going to do the video and I checked the prices today. $299, £299, $450. That's a lot of money. That's a big price rise. What's that all about?
What's it all about, Alfie?
Is it, I'm about to replace it? Are we going to get, after 6 years, 2016, after 6 years, are we going to get the Harman Kardon Go Plus Play 3 Maxi, but rather than call it the Mini? Because it's still got a place, and that's the thing. I wanted to compare. Well, you asked me about it, and I thought, you know what? This has been my go-to around that 200 for that size speaker, around the £200 mark. I think still it's where it's at in terms of value. Can do a good job. But the Tribit Stormbox Blast, it's rocked our world. It's changed a bit like when we first got the Motion, but couldn't believe it. How could a speaker that size have bass like that? It was unbelievable. The laws of physics went out the window. Wow. So here's the thing. Somebody already asked me about the Stormbox Blast versus the Go Plus Play 2 Mini. And I said, yes, this sounds warmer and fuller in the bass. That's still got a nice tight bass, but it's a bit more clinical. I think this is warmer. Maybe it sounds a little bit better. But that's with the X-Bass mode. Now, I have today I'm doing it with custom EQ. So the result may, no spoilers, be a little bit different. The difference between X-Bass and my custom mode is my custom mode for this. Now, it's not my neutral mode. I have got a neutral mode. You can check my Instagram for that. But my custom mode, which maintains, you know, the characteristics of the speaker, and it is a bass-heavy speaker, so it's still bass-heavy, but it's a little bit more neutral, and it's a little bit more clear. For me, it's a little bit more balanced, but you get a little bit less bass than you would get an X-Bass mode. If you're using the app and its EQ, you cannot get more bass without losing considerable volume than you do in X-Bass mode, which is the maximum amount of bass you can get out of it. But it's slightly muddy. So this one is with custom mode, slightly more balanced, but it is still bass heavy. Against a bass heavy speaker, when it first came out, it was one of the boom boxes. Now, it doesn't really get talked of much, except the people who already still got it and they know it still does a job and it's still good value. Well, it was till yesterday when it went to 300 quid. 300 quid, scratching my head, but then I think 350 quid, 350 pounds for the Dali Catch, which you can't even play over 50%. But, it's one of those speakers that the self-declaimed audiophiles, and I'm not putting you down anyway, but I do laugh, haha, audiophile. Everybody seems to be called an audiophile now. It certainly meant something different back in my day. I'm not saying I'm 260, but I'm not 15, you know what I'm saying? And when you've got teenagers telling me they're audiophiles, you may well be. You may be well qualified, you're already a sound engineer, but for most of them, 12, 13, 14, you're not audiophiles, I'm pretty sure you're not, and you haven't got £40,000 worth of gear. Yeah, so now, apparently you don't even need decent gear. You can have SBC, these two are SBC codecs, and apparently you can have SBC codecs, Bluetooth, a compressed format, one speaker. Don't forget, when we talk about audiophiles and what they really like, it used to be about an invisible speaker. In other words, you got two speakers creating a three-dimensional, big, expansive sound stage. You can pick out elements of the track, you can hear every detail. But here's the thing, the speakers are meant to become invisible. These don't become invisible, not least because there's one, you know exactly where it's coming from. But anyway, I digress, and we love it when I digress. What was I talking about? talk about these two speakers, of course, I talked about how that the price is a bit much. So this is swinging between about 180, 230. Today I checked it, £195, $200. That's great value. What else can you get? That's what I'm saying. Nothing. But the problem is, needs mains lead to charge it. A bit plasticky. People don't like the lights. I love the lights. I don't see the difference, but even if you turn the lights off, which you can, then they'll still work as volume indicators when you want to go up and down. But anyway, is there... It's all about the sound. I don't think you should knock a speaker because it's got lights, but hey-ho. Let's get on with it. So, using custom mode, just know that if you went to X-Bass mode, you'd get a bit more deep bass, you'd get a bit more overall bass. It will be well over the top, but still very, very pleasant. And it'll be slightly less clear than my custom EQ. You've only got one mode on the Harman Kardon Go Plus Play 2, but it's a really nice mode. So the other thing to note when we get into, I've told you, warned you, you know before you come on and say, well, custom mode, what was it default mode? It is custom mode. And what else do we already know? We know it's got a 5.5 kilohertz dip, confirmed. Other people's speakers got the same thing. It's there. It's not to do with tweeters being, well, it may be the tweeters wired the wrong way, the other way around. Sometimes they do that on purpose. Sometimes these dips are deliberate, and only they know. Well, we could mess around with a third-party app, I guess, and maybe I'll do that soon, just to see what happens if you smooth over on that 5.5 kilohertz. But sometimes these things are deliberate. Now, here's the thing: we want to hear what is it like. We don't want to hear animals going on and on. Hit Mr. Boomy Bass apparently, but hey, and that's the other thing, isn't it? Boomy Bass. Well, first of all, a lot of people don't seem to know the difference between deep bass and boomy bass. The other thing is, any speaker could have any decent, neutral, any hi-fi, audiophile quality speaker, decent speaker, can be boomy in the wrong room, not set up properly. That is really important to know. You don't have, look, a lot of these neutral tunings are based on what they call industry standard, normal stroke, treated rooms with a neutral speaker. But most of us ordinary knows. Well, I do have a treated room, but most people do not have that. But it doesn't mean to say you've got to have foam, fiberglass, etc., all over the place. It can be your furniture. A lot of this stuff is made as furniture. You do get sound treated furniture that is made that's both functional and will help absorb certain frequencies. You need to know what your room modes are. My point is, actually, it's a serious point, and it's about boomy bass. And as I said, you can take any decent speaker, put it in a reflective, resonant room. You'll end up with boomy bass, not least because bass is a very, very long wavelength. You're going to get build up all over the place. That's why, really, if you've got a boomy bass, get yourself some bass traps, start treating it calmly. It's no good just putting a speaker on a table, on a resonant table in a reflective room and saying, oh, well, it's got a boomy bass. Well, of course it's got a boomy bass. If you've got normal bass and you do that, you'll end up with boomy bass. It's just something to bear in mind because, yes, I don't get you can know me for anything you like. I mean, it's not here or there, but get the facts right. If you find something sounds boomy, unless you're outdoors, if you're outdoors, fair enough, then you get a better idea of what it's really doing. But indoors, in a reflective room, sounding boomy, that's not a problem with the speaker. It could well be, and probably is, a problem with the room you are and the way you're recording it. So there you go. Just something. Oh, don't get on with the video. Get on with the video. I'm going to get on with the video. So we're going to start doing this at low volume. When I say low volume, of course, there's a big difference in the volume steps. 45% on the Go Plus Play 2 is the same loudness as 30%. I know there's this thing, oh, we play them at the same volume step. Well, that's not the same loudness. And nobody, maybe you do, but in normal life, you get hold of a speaker and you just go, oh, a bit louder, a bit quieter. You're not looking at what the volume step is. And that's the point. I mean, adjust the loudness to your ears, and then see what the volume step is. 45% is 30%. That's low volume, because if you get any lower, these are not really for low volume. There's another thing. You want a speaker to sound good at, very low volume. It's going to be an advantage to smaller speakers. Oh, shock horror. If you went 20-foot, get some arena speakers and play them like, 20 decibels. It's going to sound awful. And you're going to get a little kitchen radio, will sound better. Physics, mate, physics. And also the distance you're listening to from of course. So for these speakers, not really great for low-level listening, but you could EQ it to make it a bit better if you wanted, just for low-level listening on Stormbox Blast. However, I wouldn't really want to listen lower volumes than this. But let's have a listen!
Quite similar in many ways. Both have a big bass boost, and indeed enough that it's making the sound a little bit muffled. And then the big differences are Go Plus Play has its peak around 3 to 4 kilohertz compared to a peak for Stormbox Blast around 7.5 kilohertz. So very similar, but clarity will be delivered in a slightly different way because of those peaks. And it's the Go Plus Play that has the bigger bass until you hit about just below 40 hertz, where there is a bit more deep bass on the Stormbox Blast, but it's quite rolled off and probably not something most people are going to hear.
I've got to say, neither of them are great listen at low volume. These are not low volume speakers. These are speakers that can do a really nice job in the bass. Yes, they are a bit overblown, but speakers like that need to be a little bit pushed just to almost sound flat to your ears in the average room. I have to admit, they are a little bit muddy for low volume listening. There's only one mode anyway on the Go Plus Play. And the Go Plus Play may be surprising to you, may be surprising to me, but remember, I'm using custom EQ, not X-Bass mode, which would have less clarity, but a bit more bass. But still, got more bass on the Go Plus Play. 2 still sounds great, but yes, it's a slightly muffled. And here's the thing, I would call this a draw, because more pleasing bass on the Go Plus Play 2 Mini, but a bit more balance. So having less bass actually helps the rest of the frequency response, mids and highs, sound a little bit clearer. It's something to note with quick A/B comparison. It's just the nature of it. We're not going to sit here for 48 hours listening to all sorts of genres. The average is between 5 to 7 minutes for people watching my videos. In quick A/B, a V-shaped nature. So most people are going to pick out differences in the bass and the highs, but not in nuances and not in the detail. You need to have long listening sessions for that, multi-genres. And that's the thing. Let's shortlist some speakers by giving you the right information, let you make the final decision. I can never say, nobody can tell you this is better than that. And certainly you can't really pick that out in an A/B, other than if you're looking for something with a big bass, that become obvious. Something that's a bit clearer will become obvious. But what isn't obvious is that could be quite tiring to listen to after an hour. So for these speakers where you're going to be listening to for over long sessions, you cannot make up for not having it in your home. I think my sort of video reviews in the similar vein are about short listening speakers. It's not about telling you which speaker you should get. Not least because it's going to sound different in every single room. So, low-level listening, both a bit muddied, but with these tunings, a bit clearer, but a bit more bass. Pays your money, you take your choice. I declare that a draw. We'll go up in volume. 70% now on the Go Plus Play 2 Mini is 70% the same loudness on the Stormbox Tribit Stormbox Blast.
I am so suffocated.
These volumes, you can see both speakers are quite accurate. The yellow line, the original track, they both follow it until you hit about 200 hertz, and below where we've got the bass boost on both of the speakers is upper bass heavy for the Stormbox Blast, similar mid bass, and then some deeper bass for the Go Plus Play, again till below 40 hertz. The big difference, once again, where they have their high-end peaks, 3 to 4 kilohertz as a peak for Go Plus Play, where we have the dip on the Stormbox Blast. Then the big old 5.5 kilohertz dip, unfortunately, is a signature of this speaker, and then a peak around 7.5 kilohertz compared to the Go Plus Play.
So here's the thing, as you go up in volume with these speakers, the differences that are there become more obvious. It was quite similar at low volume. It's still pretty similar because it's a neutral-ish tuning on both, although they both have a boosted bass, but it's still a pleasing bass. Not over the top and not too much, because there's plenty of deep mid bass, not so much upper bass. It's still a matter of taste and whether you like that or not. I think, personally, it's when the upper bass is overdone, it becomes horrendous. But that's just me, and that's certainly about indoors. Obviously, outdoors, a bit more upper bass does suit. So these volumes, a bit more clinical. People, what are you talking about? Clinical? What's that in the real world? You know, sometimes you just assume people know what you're talking about. If I say clinical, it means it's clean, it's sterile, it's lacking character. So I would never describe a warm-sounding speaker as clinical. So it's doing everything right. The detail is there. But for me, it lacks a bit of character and lacks a bit of warmth. But that's comparing the two. I really, really like the speaker. I love this speaker. I think it's a great speaker. Still, 6 years on, speaker development really has gone nowhere. Other than look what Sony's doing. Each generation gets worse and worse. The XB40, the XB30, they were the classics. And ever since then, it's going right downhill. And don't talk about Sony battery management, where you're not even allowed to play at a maximum volume after about 5 minutes. Absolutely ridiculous. But I digress. To the point being, old speakers are still, it's like headphones now, isn't it? They're not really becoming dated, other than the Bluetooth version. So, clinical, a little bit brittle. We do have quirky treble. We've got wide-angled tweeters on the Go Plus Play, which helps give it a nice wide dispersion. It sounds, it sounds quite big, bigger than the speaker itself, helped by those tweeters. But that also means, because of kind of pointing outwards, where you're listening from can make a big difference to how it sounds, and they are a bit quirky. So I'm fine with them. They certainly work. They certainly give you a lot of nice clarity, but they can be a bit grainy, a bit not sibilant, but maybe slightly harsh on the ears, and it's not to everybody's liking. For me, it works, but they're not the smoothest, they're not the sweetest tweeters you've ever heard in your life, and it's certainly a smoother listen on the Tribit Stormbox Blast. But the big differences are, as you go louder, it becomes more obviously warm, more rounded, but that's tighter, sharper, a little bit more detailed. But for me, the Stormbox Blast is a little bit fuller, although the actual responses are quite similar. But it does dig deeper on the Go Plus Play. We do have more upper and some more mids on the Stormbox Blast, but it does dig deeper till you get to below about 40 hertz. At 40 hertz, it's got a bigger bass. Then you get a bit more bass on the Stormbox Blast, but it is now rolled off and it's getting into the noise floor. So whether you hear that or not, it's a matter of debate. But it does make it closer than it may appear by looking at sheer measurements. So my preference here is for the Stormbox Blast, but only just. It's really going to be a matter of taste. What you may describe this as being a bit more boomy, and you may describe that as being tighter. But hey ho, put that in a corner. It's going to get quite boomy. Put that in the middle of the room, a bit less boomy. Placement is everything with bass. You get like up to 6 decibel gain especially in smaller rooms. The smaller your room, the more the build-up is going to be, the more boomy it's going to be. The more resonant your room is, the more reverberant the room is, the more boomy it's going to be. Move around, you'll start getting the peaks and the nulls. People who are into their home cinema know this well. Anyone who's serious about home cinema has multi-subwoofers, because it's a nightmare getting the bass right in several listening positions and getting rid of peaks and nulls. You need to do that with. So yeah, it's another thing I think is overdone at the moment. Yeah, I don't care. Call me Mr. Boomy, but I know why you call me Mr. Boomy. It's because, well, you've not quite understood exactly what's going on even in terms of, I won't get into that. Why? Let's just carry on enjoying our speakers because it's all about audio and that's all that really matters. People, I'm caressed it from, I still remember someone complaining, I don't know if they're complaining or saying, you're always caressing your speakers. Well, yes. I wasn't aware there was a law against it. So let's get on to, well, now 70% on the Stormbox Blast is maximum volume on the Go Plus Play. So this is going to be an interesting listen.
I just wanna dance and my hair starts moving. It makes me feel like I'm losing control. I just wanna dance and my hair keeps moving. It makes me feel like I've never felt before. I just wanna da 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 da. I just wanna dance and my head starts moving. It makes me feel like I'm losing control. I just wanna dance and my head keeps moving. It makes me feel like I've never felt before. I just wanna dance and my hair starts moving. It makes me feel like I'm losing control. I just wanna dance and my head keeps moving. It makes me feel like I've never felt before.
Again, not bad in terms of accuracy. Both follow the original track till below 200 hertz, where we get the bass boost. More upper bass for the Stormbox Blast, similar-ish mid bass, and then some deeper bass for the Go Plus Play. Not much changing. We've got the 5.5 kilohertz dip, of course, for the Stormbox Blast. We've got the 3 to 4 kilohertz peak where there's a dip on the Stormbox Blast, but then a peak about 7.5 kilohertz for the Stormbox Blast, compared to more accurate, we have to say, high end on the Go Plus Play.
So for me, as I said before, the louder you go, the more the character of these speakers becomes obvious when you're doing ABs. Tight, slightly clinical, lacks warmth, maybe a little bit cold, but detailed, and it has this hi-fi-ish quality. And here's the thing, and it's the other thing we get talked about. Oh, this speaker sounds flat and natural, and it's more of audiophile. Without realizing, it's quite easy to fake the sound of an audiophile speaker. They like a lot of air. They like it to sound crisp and a little bit of bass. That don't make it flat, let me tell you. There's many ways to make it sound like that, and I see that the Darley Catch is a great example. Really, really off, certainly not flat, all over the place, but it's got that audiophile kind of sound to it, where it's crispy, airy, and it's got enough bass to kid, but the rest of it is scooped out, so almost a one-note bass, until you get over 50% at low volume. But so I know exactly what they're describing, but a lot of them don't understand what they're actually describing. It's a laugh. Who cares? It's all about having fun, isn't it? But I just think the amount of actual misinformation going on currently is getting a little bit silly. It's getting silly because not everybody has a lot of knowledge. They come into these, you've got to understand, I know a lot of you do know your stuff, and you're watching every video, and you've been doing it for years, and you know exactly what's going on, the technicalities. But there seems to be a new generation, I think, coming on, that just listening to a few voices, not enough voices, think they know exactly what's supposed to happen. There isn't one way to listen to a speaker. Let's get this straight. There's no rights or wrong. I didn't go next door and tell my mate, you've picked the wrong wife because I don't fancy her. It's silly. And to me, music is an art. And it's about, you just got to like what you have. Now we can do all the technical measurements and say this measures better than others. But well, I don't want to go down this route again. I keep going on about it. I just finished my little rant there by saying none of these measurements, even with the ones with these $100,000 clippers, do they understand? Nobody is saying that's how a speaker should sound. It's just that the market research says most experienced ears Most people working this prefer this neutral kind of sound. Not that it's ever the same in any two rooms or any two ears, but they're saying, we sell most speakers, they like it that way. And all the measurements are to produce the in-room response with the right slope and evened out, because there's no other. But there's no law of physics that says that's the perfect sound. It's just what you like. But you must understand, when Harman did all this, it's to sell the most speakers. Now, does that mean if one person says one thing and everyone else says the other thing, all the others must be right? If that's the case, why did it take Einstein to come up with the theory of relativity? I'll leave you to ponder on that one. Anyway, 100%, it's impressive what the Go Plus Play 2 is doing, because it's holding on to all its bass. It's still a good listen, even at maximum volume. And that's the thing, we know now it's becoming industry standard for most of them to limit the bass at 80% and then just allowing you to go a bit higher with the mids and the treble for a bit more loudness, but then it becomes a screech fest. It's never a screech fest on the Go Plus Play 2. And when they're matched for the maximum volume there, it's still holding its own in terms of that bass. And what remains is the differences in character of the speakers, where they've got the dips. As we said, they've got the opposite. We've got the 3 kilohertz dip on the Stormbox Blast, where we got a peak on the Go Plus Play 2 Mini, 7.5 kilohertz peak, where it's more neutral. I won't say dip, but it's more neutral. And there are the two differences. That's where you're going to get clarity, and that's the differences in clarity you'll hear is where they got difference in peaks, 3.5, 7.5 kilohertz, and the other's dipping or is more neutral. Otherwise, they're quite similar. Other than the bass, this will go a bit deeper until about 40 hertz. But 40 hertz, I think, is kind of the cutoff for what you will hear in the real world in a big, complex track. But that can go a little bit deeper as it goes towards its noise floor. But I would say I still prefer the warmer sound and the smoother sound. I mean, that's still a bit sharp. And as I said, for some people, the highs on this are not nice. I'm not going to say sibilant, but it's kind of spitty. So again, horses for courses, but that's the cheap right now. It's much cheaper. You've got much more potential. It's very EQable. This is with my custom mode. X-Bass will give you more bass. The question is, what's going to happen when that goes to maximum volume? Is it going to be all over and the Go Plus Play is going, woo, goodbye?
Show me what you see through the smoke and the lights. Calling somebody for my own is a feeling I don't own anymore. I've honestly gotta be losing my way, losing my way, losing my way. Coming close to me, what do you say? How can I love you if you pull away, you pull away, you pull away? I'm tired of being tongue-tied.
Both speakers maximum volume, and yes, Stormbox Blast goes significantly louder, but when you hit 60 hertz and below, the bass is about the same on both speakers, so of course that's going to sound more bass heavy, smoother on the Go Plus Play, and screechier, harder listen now on the Stormbox Blast. Overall 8 decibels louder on the Stormbox Blast, but that's all mids and highs. It's 7 decibels up even in terms of just peak. And then dominates, of course, upper bass, mid bass, but we got a tad more in the deep bass on the Go Plus Play 2. And so there are major differences now at a maximum volume.
And there's the thing, At the maximum volume of the Go Plus Play, when they're loudness matched, it's quite even, but I would give it to the Stormbox Blast, but they both are a good listen. But when you get past that, and we're getting into where this goes so much louder, I mean, does it go a bit louder? No, it doesn't. It goes a lot louder. I mean, we're talking 8 decibels louder in LUFS. Remember, a lot of when we talk about loudness, it's different things to different people. So 8 decibels in LUFS. Remember, LUFS is weighted. So less weight is on the bass, more on the mids and highs, because people are less sensitive. You could have loads and loads of bass, but people don't perceive it as being that loud. Equal loudness curves, have a look at that. And by the way, I've heard talk, you can tune, your speakers should be tuned to equal loudness curves. No, only at low volume, where you're making up for lack of dynamics because of how sensitive R is, or unsensitive R is at low volume. Do not use equal loudness curves to EQ a speaker at moderate to high volumes. It's completely unnatural, and is, you know, it runs in the face of what equal loudness curves are. I just put that out because another thing I've seen lately about misinformation. So of course I completely forgot. I was talking about how loud they go. So LUFS puts more weight on the mids and highs. It's 8 decibels, and but it is now a screech fest, isn't it? So it has limited its bass, like we know, 80%. You get in the mids and highs, but it's not a great listen. But hey ho, outdoors, you're having a barbecue. You've got 48 million people turned up. You only invited 2, and you don't know who the others are, but someone brought their mates, and you just want it to cut through that background noise. It will do that. You can't do that on there because, well, I don't know how much louder it could possibly go if they limited the bass, but they haven't. They've made it a decent listen at all volumes. So louder, but unpleasant, and still got plenty of bass there, but it doesn't count that much towards any of these measurements, even whether it's peak or LUFS. They give you less marks, so to speak, in terms of how much bass you're producing. And the Go Plus Play 2 is still producing more deep bass than the Stormbox Blast because it's limited, and in fact it's actually reduced it a little bit, and that's the problem. So it does fall apart a little bit as you go to maximum volumes. Becomes, well, a bit of a screech fest. It would be less of a screech fest if I was in X-Bass mode, just pointing that out, but I wanted to do this in custom mode because it's a bit more balanced, and this is a more hi-fi-ish kind of sounding speaker. So that's pretty much around it. You know where you are. I think either of these 2 speakers you'd be happy. Just checking your notes, make sure I ain't, as usual, missed out something important. I've covered it all, I think, until I get to editing and realise there was a million things I didn't do. I told you about that this is in custom mode, X-Bass mode. Just know it will be slightly less clear and a little bit more bass heavy. Will be more bass if you switch to X-Bass mode. And probably, I mean, said all that and spent 2 hours telling you about A being the big problem with the Go Plus Play 2 is battery. Harman Kardon, I think, trying not to eat into JBL cells, so they're making sure you're not really going to use this portable. Why is that? Because it's got a 22.2 watt hour battery. I just did the Me for Wild Camping. It's a little lantern with a little speaker. It's got a 35 watt hour battery, 22.2 watt hour battery. I mean, that's appalling. It's a joke. It should never have happened, but they don't want you to go portable with it. Clearly, 71.3 watt hour battery. That alone is probably a reason for you to say, oh, I've just sat there 30 minutes of this and it's got a little battery. It's completely pointless. Well, you can go portable, but you just can't go portable for long if it's a party. You'd have to have your Tribit Stormbox Blast, and that's no bad thing. Other specs I tell you, surprisingly, they're both made in Germany. No, obviously, they're both made in China. 6 years old, 2016. New out in June 2022. Both SBC codecs. When we talk about the people still coming on and saying, you don't know what you're talking about. I've been an audiophile. I've been on all the forums. See, there must be an audiophile. And they love it, and they're looking at these SBC codec over a Bluetooth, which is a compressed format anyway. I really don't know these days. But hit me up in the comments, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hit me up in the comments. Let me know what is an audiophile these days. By the way, so can do stereo pairing, but can only do party mode on the Go Plus Play 2. Neither of them have USB-C charging. Got to use a mains lead on the Tribit Stormbox Blast, a barrel charger on the Go Plus Play. Both can be used as a power bank. Go Plus Play 2, you can do phone calls with that. You can't do that with the Blast. Got lights on. The audiophile's leaving the room. It's got lights on the Stormbox Blast, but you can turn them off. There's no lights, but there's lights on the top there to tell you what the controls are. 3.5 kilos, 5.5 kilos. It's a big bugger, you know, so I've got to tell you that. Here's the thing, not IP rated at all. IPX7, 30 minutes in 1 meter of water, and it floats with the drivers up, although other people are saying theirs doesn't, but I have to tell you, mine does float with the drivers up. That is great, and a surprise for how heavy the speaker is. In terms of those drivers, so they both got 2 woofers, 2 tweeters, and 2 passive radiators. But the thing is, we've got 107mm woofers on the Stormbox Blast, and they are the woofers from the Boombox 2. Yes, they bought the same woofers JBL have been using, and they sound great. It's 90mm woofers on the Go Plus Play 2. My testing for latency has an accuracy of plus or minus 17 milliseconds. I measured no latency on either of them. They both have auxiliary inputs. So I measured as accurately as I can, no latency, and even Bluetooth latency is pretty reasonable on both of them, around 80 milliseconds. For me, that's the cutoff point where you start to notice the lip sync. Obviously, it depends how sensitive you are to it, but streaming YouTube, 80 milliseconds, that's fine on both of these big speakers. We've got an app, and it's a developing app. It's certainly come on leaps and bounds, still slightly flaky, but improving. Usable EQ, although it still can be a little bit flaky, but getting better. Got an app, got no app at all. You can have an app and the speaker may not be very EQable. You start pushing sliders, sounds terrible. There's no headroom on the drivers, or the sound hardly changes at all. You can make a big difference to the sound with the EQ without doing anything obviously detrimental to the sound. That's been my A-B comparison of these 2 speakers. Is there anything else? And we're 34 minutes in. Are we still recording? We are still recording. Sometimes my camera's turned off, but they're still going. That means I can carry on waffling. So that's the roundup. I gave you the specs. What else can we talk about? Yeah, so the point being, both good speakers, but that seems to be a bit overpriced now. But very different in the nature. Probably more of a purist speaker, the Go Plus Play 2. More of a fun boombox, but can actually have a decent neutral tuning and sound good indoors as well. The problem is the 5.5 kilohertz dip. It is in a crucial part of the frequency response. That's a shame, but hey ho, it is what it is, and it still sounds really, really nice. That's been my video. The clue is we're at the end of the video. Woo, everyone cheering, it's funny, that's the end of it. All we know is he likes boomy speakers. Do you know what? I couldn't care less if I'm known as Mr. Boomy. What's wrong with that? I don't care. If my taste is boomy, then fine. I don't care. I like what I like. And if you want to call it the most ridiculous, the only funny thing is when you call when you say I like something, I must be deaf. I mean, do you get the irony of that? I must be deaf to like a certain tuning. Well, I can't be deaf if I like it, can I? I wouldn't hear it. But you know, that's pretty much consistent with the people that are saying these silly things. Anyway, this has been my review. Thank you for watching. See you next time.
I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Ain't no project wife, got my logic right, guess I'm not your type. I ain't about that life. I ain't about that life. Sorry, ma, I ain't get it right. I'ma just live my life. I ain't about that. I ain't about that life.